First Newsline with Harsha de Silva.
And very good evening to you and welcome to Newsline Live. And now this evening we've got our guest. He's better known, not by his name, but by a set of numbers, Mr. 1990, 1990. He's right here with us, of course, Dr. Harsha de Silva, Member of Parliament representing the SJB. Very good evening to you, Dr. Harsha de Silva.
Good evening, Faraz.
Yes.
First of all, before we start the show,
Yeah.
I think there's a need for you to take a PCR test. Have you done it?
I've done it all and I'm socially distanced now.
Okay, right.
Okay.
Then
Now
we
then,
can continue. Then we can
good,
continue.
we can. Thank
Yeah.
you. Actually, no jokes aside, it's absolutely essential that we all do our bit.
Yes,
and
sure.
Transgressions aside, we need to have this whole business in mind. But now then, today, Dr. Harsha, we had the Prime Minister say that there's no way that the East Container Terminal will be given to anyone other than in the hands of Sri Lanka. Some hours later, the Indian embassy was almost hot off the mark, saying that they expect the agreement previously entered into to be met. Now, it seems to be that the Harpalana government, who signed the agreement previously, the memorandum of cooperation, has now put this current government into a bit of a problem because they don't want to give it, or so the Prime Minister says. And the Indians are insisting on the agreement that you all made. So don't you think there's a bit of a problem?
Well, I mean, I was honestly quite taken aback a bit because, like you said, it was immediate.
Yes.
The release was immediate. Now, in the release, they mentioned three things. One, they said, well, there was a memorandum of cooperation signed in 2019. Then it said that at the leadership level, in the recent past, it was conveyed to them that this tripartite agreement was going to go ahead. Then the third thing they said was this cabinet, Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa's cabinet, of which Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa is a member and the Prime Minister, had agreed to continue with the tripartite agreement. That is what Ambassador Gopal Barclay said this evening. Now, you see, of course, this agreement can be, they need not sign it if they don't want to.
Yeah.
They work with an Indian party and a Japanese party.
Yeah.
That is to operate the terminal operating company. Not the terminal, but the terminal operating company.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Harsha, can I just interject for a moment there? The terminal that the government, your government, was proposing to give over, the East Container Terminal, it has a depth of 18 meters, so suitable for the much larger vessels of current times. But this would mean that the government terminal, which is only 14.5 meters and no possibility of bridging it and so on, will, as it is, it's struggling. So people would have said, well, give that for smaller vessels and let the Ports Authority have the East Container Terminal.
You see,
because at 2.5 million TEUs times $60 is about $150 million turnover.
yeah, I mean, so, okay. The first deep water port in this part of the world was the CICT terminal, which was given to the Chinese company, CICT, by Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa.
Yeah.
In fact, it was originally Sri Lanka Ports Authority 15%.
Yeah.
Then Aitken Spence had some amount. and CICT had another amount.
Yeah.
And if I recall correctly, there was a requirement that a local company had to be part of that consortium. But after the deal went through, Aitken Spence, for whatever reason, withdrew. And then CICT took 85% stake in that particular terminal. And that was done by Mr. Rajapaksa.
Right.
So
that was one.
So that is a deep water port, right? 18 meter. Then prior to that, Madam Chandrika negotiated the deal with
another company,
with John Keel's, APL or something like that. Then Evergreen, all these people together. John Keel's having, I think, like 30 odd %, and that is also the private group had 85%, and SLPA had 15%. Right? So it is as if these people are saying, look, we've never done this, it is those guys who've been selling ports and so on, but it is these same people who did these two transactions. I am not trying to justify, I'm not trying to justify what Mr. Wickramasinghe did or Mr. Sirisena did in that government. I was not a member of the cabinet, so therefore I have no responsibility.
You don't have any collective responsibility.
I don't have any collective responsibility. Right? Having said that, these are the people who, before the election, told the country, we will never, lease, sell, joint venture, have a joint venture with anyone on this port. But it is the same people. So, in fact, it is up to them. The ball is in their court.
But what's all the fuss about? I mean, as I said before, according to the capacity, 2.5 million TEUs at about, let's say, $60 a pop. It's $150 million turnover. You probably make $15 million. It's not a big amount to rock the economy. I'm not just downplaying $15 million, but you get the drift. What I'm saying is it's not big. It's not big money. So what's the concern? Is it that Sri Lanka will then, this SLPA will only be left with a shallower berth where they can only do smaller ships, and they won't have a hold, well, they'll have an interest but not a hold over all the deep water terminals?
Yeah, I mean, you have a point there. Yes, if this is leased out, they will not have the full control and full ownership of a deep water port or terminal. But here, don't forget, for us, the way we have been told, I have not seen the agreement, this is all what we hear and read in the press, is that SLPA will actually hold 51% of the shares of this terminal operating company. So which means SLPA will have 51% stake in this deep water terminal.
Right. So I know we don't have the document, but we had the State Minister of Capital Markets, Mr. Cabral, giving a press conference in which he confirmed exactly what you said, that it's 51% of the government, and therefore they have all the control.
Yeah, so I mean, I am talking about the cabinet paper of 2019.
Yeah.
That is Wickramasinghe Sirisena. Sirisena Wickramasinghe government had the memorandum of cooperation was for a 51 stake for the SLPA and 49 for unnamed nominee
from Japan and
from
India.
Japan and India. See, the thing is this. I mean, sometimes, people might wonder, look, why is it good or is it necessary for ports to sort of work together? I mean, port terminal operating companies, shipping lines, generally it's a network.
Yeah.
And if you are in the network, efficiencies are greater, you are able to get more business into these ports, which are then somehow linked to each other, with each other. Now, for instance, if you look at Hambantota, you know, the SLPA tried to get Hambantota off the ground, but they were not able to do that. China Merchant has come in, and now I understand there is quite a bit of activity going on, and these Hambantota port will also get linked to their network of ports across the world. So if we are able to do it efficiently, we don't need anyone else. Right? Don't get me wrong for us, right? But if we need to formulate a consortium whereby Sri Lanka will benefit at the end of the day, right? Because we mustn't forget, this is our country, this is our asset, this is our port, this is our sea, and so this belongs to us.
And can a consortium of Sri Lankan, wholly Sri Lankan-owned businesses run this East Container Terminal as successfully as anyone else?
Now, if you look at SAGT, right? I mean, it's John Keells that has the largest share of that terminal operating company, right? And SAGT is also a very efficient player. I think CICT is a more efficient player, but SAGT is also an efficient player because, from what I understand, they've brought together a bunch of players who are you know, big boys in the entire operation.
Right.
So this is not about India or about China or about America or about someone else. It is about how do we leverage our the strategic location. How do we benefit from this? I mean, if you go back and look at Sri Lanka's economic history, you know, and the trade we had with the rest of the world, it goes back centuries, you know, millennia actually. And, you know, the story about the Parakrama Bahu story that I always talk about, you know, about Myanmar. Today, Myanmar is in the news once again, right? How that trade happened, how hundreds and, you know, thousands of ships, you know, sailed across the Pork Straits and in the Indian Ocean, and how Sri Lanka was a center for trade.
Sri Lanka is always at the center of this maritime. It's like a maritime hub for years and years.
That's what I'm saying. So, I mean, we as an island situated at the right place, 60,000 ships pass by annually. How do we make the most of it? How do we make the most of it, right? So I think that is how we need to look at it.
Right, and as we come up to the break, and after the break, we're going to discuss this point. Sri Lanka's public sector debt is expected to have surpassed 98.8% of GDP. Meanwhile, the budget deficit continues to escalate and economic growth prospects remain strained. Let's find out, shall we, with Dr. Harsha de Silva after this break.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukatali. Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukatali.
And welcome back, and I'm in conversation with Dr. Harsha de Silva here on Newsline Live. Dr. de Silva, the budget deficit continues to escalate and economic growth prospects remain strained. How close are we to going to the IMF for the 17th time?
I think going to the IMF is inevitable. I think it will happen sooner than later. I think all what the government spokespeople are saying are just, you know, they're trying to bluff their way through. The reality is very different to what they are attempting to show the country. We are in serious trouble. revenue numbers are nowhere near what is necessary to meet the expenditure. Debt overhang problem is not going away, it's getting worse. The rupee continues to be under tremendous pressure, even with massive import restrictions, import bans, even the banning of forward agreements on
We saw that, yeah. What
no
about
forward purchases,
yeah.
all those restrictions.
What about the restructuring of sovereign bonds?
Yeah, so let me come to that. The state banks selling on behalf of the government, trying to show up the currency. It went to last week at the beginning it was hitting 200, but they brought it back up to about 190 something, 93 or so. But today it has gone back down again. Temporarily you may be able to hold it for a few days, a couple of weeks, but the fundamentals don't dictate the value of the currency to be anywhere near what the government ministers say it ought to be, 185 and so on. I think it's 200 plus. Now you talked about the international sovereign bonds. Look at what's happening in the secondary market for these bonds today, just today, right? They're trading at 30% plus. The discounted value, or rather it's 60 cents, 50 cents to 60 cents a dollar. The bonds maturing in 2022, 24, 25, going up to 2030. So the issue is, would we have to go to the IMF and sort of restructure our debt? And the answer to that question is yes. There's no way around it, right?
So the longer this business is delayed, at least to do all the restructuring, whatever, we're going to have to need a credible sort of partner, if you like. And the longer you delay it, the greater the cost.
You see, I was reading in one of the Sunday newspapers, and apparently an ambassador said to somebody, and it was reported, and that person had said that you people have a superpower complex or something like that,
Right.
Meaning, I think what they mean is, well, we are able to handle everything on our own. Now, in the case of this whole debt issue, it's the same thing, right? We have about $50 billion of foreign currency debt. Of that, about 32, maybe $33 billion is debt by the government of Sri Lanka. Then private sector, we have close to $20 billion that we owe to various people outside. So at the end of the day, whether it is government or whether it is a private bank or an entity, you need to be able to make those payments with the reserves available in this country. And we have about $5 billion. And in the next 12 months, we need about $6 or $6.5 billion to meet our obligations. So the question is simple. Are we having a liquidity problem or are we having an insolvency problem? Right? I mean, if it is a liquidity problem, it is temporary matter. We can find ways. We can do a swap. We can borrow some money short. We can find a bridge. And then we can resolve the matter because it's a liquidity issue. But if it is a solvency issue, then you have a restructuring issue at hand. You have a long-term problem at hand. You need to be able to get the economy to grow back again. You have to, do away with the debt overhang problem. We have to restructure the debt. So the insolvency problem is completely different to a liquidity problem,
So
and that is much, much more complex.
Who's running the economy of Sri Lanka? Is it Dr. Jayasundra?
Yeah,
Is it
yeah,
Mr. Cabral?
No, not Mr. Cabral. I think it's Mr. Jasundara. So.
Right. He's the president's secretary.
Yeah.
And he's running the economy.
That's what we hear.
Right. So why isn't he seated at the treasury? Or does
Well,
it really
Mr.
not matter?
Artikala is at the treasury, but Mr. Artikala consults Mr. Jasundara is what I understand. I mean, the problem is...
Is it a personality problem or is it a policy problem? What is the problem?
It's an ideology problem, I think.
Right.
It's an ideology problem. Right. I mean, import substitution, right? We don't need, to engage with the world. We will do it ourselves. We will substitute this. We will manufacture imports. Manufacture stuff, Just today, I was talking to a furniture manufacturer this afternoon, and he was telling me, look, we have the timber. Okay, some of the timber we can use, but everything else, even the to finish the product, we need to bring everything in, right? And it's like that in every other manufacturing operation that we have.
Yeah.
We need to bring in quite a bit of intermediate and raw materials to complete manufacturing. So with these very high tariff walls, what you're doing is you are making our production, our manufacturing very inefficient. Right? So if you're running an inefficient system, you are never going to be able to get out of the mess that we are in.
No, thank you for your questions. By the several addressed here. Much of them Dr. De Silva has been talking about. But there's one which we didn't touch on. I'll read that out to you. With all due respect, if the previous government had not defrauded the government in terms of the central bank and people covering up with footnotes, the debt would have been so much easier.
You see, I have answered this multiple times. You see, in the technical committee, the notes that were included are technically accurate. These are the ones that call for the forensic audit.
Yeah.
That's what called for data from the central bank and other places, because when we sat in that committee for us, they didn't give us data. We had very, very limited.
So we got the data.
We had to. I've been in academics. I'm a professor. I know how to write a academic report. And if you need further information, you have a note that to insert saying, look, these are the issues.
Right.
And every single note that had been put in there was found to be completely factually accurate, right? So listen,
right. Yeah.
Having said that,
yeah.
Every person, right, who was involved in this thing must be brought to justice. And these people said that is what they were going to do.
Yes, that's true.
And they haven't done anything about it.
It's an item on the manifesto that they would prosecute everybody involved in the central bank so-called bond scam. And nothing apparently has been done. And it's over a year now, Mr. President. And we really would like you to take action. Dr. Harsha de Silva, thank you very much for being on the program. And it is now time for that wonderful program called The News, the primetime news from News First. Take care, have a great evening ahead of you, a wonderful week, and God bless you.